Cosmic salutations, divine humanity. This is Darren Austin Hall coming to you with my 2025 message and also hooking into this new moon in Capricorn, which is taking place just before the New Year portal, and also tying a bit of a bow on the year that we're just passing, that we're letting go of, 2024. Now, if you follow my work and my art, you know that every year I channel a universal message for humanity, the kind of vibration, the mythopoetic theme that I see is being ushered in the year to come. And just to do a quick review, so last year when I was looking at visioning 2024, what came through is that 2024 would be the year of devotional allegiance. And what that elaborated as is that I really believe that when the Mayans portended that 2012 was going to be the beginning of what's known as the ninth wave of galactic consciousness, and the Mayans are just brilliant that they were able to demark that our galaxy goes through these primed evolutions every it used to be huge space of time between them, and now it's just been getting faster and faster and faster. And 2012 wasn't the end of the world, although the Illuminati, as I like to call them because they're very naughty, tried to distract us by creating all this fear about 2012. It's going to be the end of the world. You remember there was movies that came out, and there was this real kind of palpable terror that was being enabled, that was being conditioned into us. But for the Mayan, this was a time of celebration because it was the beginning of a new cycle, the end of the previous. So there was an ending occurring, but not the end of the world. And the new cycle was the age of unity consciousness, when all the prior waves would start to come into coherence. Now, this has also meant that since 2012, anything that is not in unity is being exposed because that wave is basically alchemizing us into this higher harmonic of togetherness and interconnection. So anything that is not in interdependence any longer is being exposed and composted back into its raw form to then be utilized in the next cycle or what have you as raw energy. And this is why we've been seeing so much divisiveness highlighted in the world. But despite all that, for most of us who are attuned, if you turn off, the fear-mongering news and all that matrix brainwashing, there is a great awakening happening within our collective. We are truly awakening to the spiritual truths of our ultimate reality. There's a great convergence of science and spirituality. There is a true universal field of truth that is emerging, and this is the very foundation of what is needed to construct a golden age, which is where we are eventually headed. Perhaps not in our lifetime, we are more the catalyst, but we are passing on this torch for this to truly come into fruition, and it really shall, destined to do so. And so devotional allegiance I saw as kind of this new octave of expression of this unity consciousness, where I believe more of us in this past year have started to witness a transpersonal purpose, a purpose that we can all start to unify around, whether that is simply being devoted to the collective evolution of human consciousness, whether it's being devoted to the resurrection of the goddess, which is something that I'm very attuned to from my studies of the ancient mystery schools and the Gaia Sophia mythology. Or perhaps it's just feeling this just great togethering that is happening all over the world, where people are starting to stand up and resist a lot of tyrannical government policies, and people are starting to feel this allegiance to each other across party lines, across racial lines. And a lot of the divisions are forcing this issue because it's not fun witnessing the Middle East absolutely ensnared in suffering and genocide and war and terrorism. And it's pushing us to an edge of kind of desperate revelation, where it's like, what is it going to take for us to transcend these racial and religious divisions that continue to manipulate us into revenge games, bloodshed against one another, and failing to witness that we're all one human family. And even beyond that, to subvert the human supremacy complex, as I call it, to really see that we are also one family of creation here on earth, which is so beautiful. So I really feel at the end of this year, as I've reviewed, that really played out this year, that there is more of this devotional allegiance, and you have to be devoted to that higher purpose. You have to have that sacred commitment. It's not just about like a commitment to your business or such. It's like a commitment that rallies your whole life force towards something higher. And that will continue to emerge as we continue to inspire a mythological or a guiding narrative amongst our species, which will really start to spur this awakening of a heroic consciousness. Because we can't just live our lives for our own self-interest. It can only get you that far. To truly be the most excellent, the most magnanimous, the great souled humans that we all look up to, whether it's the Gandhis or even in our narratives like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. These are people who see themselves devoted to a higher purpose that serves all of humanity, all of the divine, all of life in general, all of creation. So when I came to reflect on 2025 recently, it really hit me like a lightning bolt today before I did this talk, that I really feel 2025 will be the year of radiant resilience. And I'm not just putting radiant before resilience to sound fancy or kind of new agey and poetic. I really believe this is the resilience of our light this year. And the reason that this is coming through is I believe that this year we are going to continue to see exposure on the planet of what's been lurking in the shadows of our world and our collective. And please take heart that this is a good sign, because this is symptomatic of the fact that our collective light is continuing to become so incandescent, so bright, so radiant, that whatever is hiding in the shadows in our world is being exposed. And then the work is to process that, to process what we're seeing there. And to process it means a passageway of integrity, to draw these fragments back, because we've been so fragmented as a species on an individual level and on a collective level. Something I've been speaking about lately, I've been doing a few podcast interviews, and I've been sharing about, and also, if you haven't seen on my YouTube channel, I felt very called this year to speak a lot about Jesus and Yeshua around Christmas and the winter solstice. And of course, I've been seeing in our culture this rising return to Jesus, to Christ. And I've had my own concerns about that. And also great optimism with it as well, because I do believe we are being activated into a whole new awakening of what is Christ consciousness, which I believe, according to the Gnostics, is more about remembering our divine essence as humanity. And one of my dear friends, she inspired me, she encouraged me on this Christmas Eve to do a kind of midnight mass. So I did a talk through the midnight portal on Christmas Eve, and it's already got over 1,000 views on Facebook, and I've received so many beautiful messages and comments. And it's very much a precursor into this radiant resilience that I'm seeing in 2025. So I do recommend going to check that out. But in 2025, this idea of radiant resilience, and what I've been speaking about on these podcasts, is that because we have been so suppressed for so long, humanity has been so suppressed. And I'm talking on the level of knowledge and wisdom and personal expression. If you become a student of his story, of what's happened in the last 2,000 years, especially with the rise of paternal, patriarchal systems of religion and authoritarian control, it's been a huge story of suppression, oppression, persecution, and genocide, brutally so in a lot of cases, of more of our mystical aspects. I think wholeheartedly about the suppression and genocide of the pagans, which was a derogatory word for the indigenous Europeans all over Europe and Asia, with the rise of Roman Christianity and that empire by 200 AD, 200 years after we're told the death of Jesus, if you identified as a pagan, which meant you were polytheistic, you believed in the goddess, you believed in gnosis, that each and every single human being had the divine and natural birthright to have a direct connection with God, that you didn't necessarily need the priest to be the sole authority of that, being that emissary, that we were all oracles. It was punishable by death. And people were hunted down. People were killed in untold millions. And not only were people violently persecuted and murdered, but also our knowledge and wisdom was. I think of the Library of Alexandria. The biggest repository of human knowledge was burned to the ground by the Romans. A lot of the ancient texts were burned. We even think of the book burnings in recent times. And what this did is it kind of regressed humanity. It kind of retarded our growth. And then this led us into the Dark Ages of being disconnected from the sacred, which led to horrendous times of suffering, of endless wars, often quite brutal ones. And as I mentioned, witch hunts and persecutions. And then lots of rampant diseases as we, killed the medicine men and women, the folk traditions that had kept us well and healthy for so long. And then this eventually gave rise to, materialist science, which completely divorced us from the mystical, animistic potentials of nature. And, I've written a lot and I speak a lot about having studied scientific criticism at university. A lot of people don't know that the rise of modern science in like the 17th century with René Descartes and Francis Bacon and such, this was a transference of a lot of fundamentalist Christian values into this new dogmatism of what's known as empirical modern science. So we've been through a lot, and yet now we live in this blessed time where, thanks to things like the internet, this telecommunications, digital technology has fundamentally opened up all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom that has been suppressed and oppressed for so long. And that's an incredible thing, just to take a moment to honor that we are alive in this time of blessed awakening to truth, of truth being unleashed and breaking from its shackles. And this is empowering humanity and inspiring this profound evolutionary leap forward, as there is so much profound interest in spirituality now, and truth is truly coming to light. And as we start to do the work of connecting to our souls, this inner radiance that is said to reside in our hearts, the ignorance, the darkness is being melted as the light starts to shine. And we start to witness what is in the shadows, as I mentioned at the top of this talk. And we really have to take heart that this year in 2025, I believe we're going to see a lot more being exposed in the shadows. And we have to take heart that this is part of a bigger process, that this is but a sign that our light is shining even brighter. And these are parts of ourselves that need to be treated with tremendously fierce compassion. That is why this year I recommend that we spend way more time in nature, that we spend way more time being in balance. This word balance is very, very key if you are going to live the good life, an excellent life. You need to have an appropriate balance between being and doing, for example. So when I say being, that means practicing mindfulness as much as you can, being present to your body. In meditation, you should be meditating every day, I recommend. It's your daily bread. We have to remember that all the esoteric, all the occult, all the plant medicine ceremonies, it doesn't really matter if you aren't doing the day-to-day revolution of your consciousness to overturn the hegemony, the domination of this egoic, limited sense of self that exists mostly in the intellect, bouncing between one hemisphere to the other. And it loses sense of the synthesis of the present moment, which is more when we're living in the heart. And when we're living in the present moment in the heart, which takes steadfast devotion day in and day out, because the monkey mind constantly tempts us to be in this fractured schizoid state. And that's all we've known. Our whole society itself is enabling that, is reflecting that. but we are being asked to give birth to higher and new forms of consciousness, new evolutionary forms. And I speak about this in my Christ consciousness activation, that this is really what I think Jesus and all the great master avatars were trying to teach us, that on the most mundane level, are you living moment to moment in presence? Because that is a very different kind of consciousness. And the more you spend time in present moment awareness, the more you start to discern that there are different ways that we are. You know, when we're drifting from the past and the future, we're literally kind of dreaming awake. And yet when we're present, even washing the dishes, any mundane activity can be an opportunity to practice and amplify our presence. Then we feel deeply embodied. And when we're deeply embodied, our sensuality is amplified, our senses are amplified. And then we actually get to connect to this higher realm of intelligence that surrounds us, this kind of cosmic divine intelligence. And this is why when people live in more presence, they are more connected to what is known as the guiding realm, as the Taoists called it. This is very much the world that the heart initiates us into. The Taoists also said the heart is where we learn knowing how through the guiding realm. At any moment, we know how to do whatever the thing is in our life, whatever problems we have in our life. If we go into our heart, we will find the insights and the revelations bubbling forth. The sad thing in life is that people don't have this trust because, again, for thousands of years, we've been told that the authority, that God, the divine, the priest, the priestess is outside of ourselves, and that's where we have to go for this guidance. But no, the gnosis, the direct connection, is actually deep inside your heart. And so this year, that is going to be tested. We are going to have to be more and more resilient. Who knows, what kinds of things? There seems to be a lot of things that are on the precipice of happening this year, where it could be, a fake alien invasion. We could be looking at all kinds of disclosure around aliens and UFOs, which is going to throttle our collective. Trump is going to be inaugurated. Will he? Will there be a resistance? There's still a huge fracture in the world when it comes to that left and right political kind of duplicity. The economy, there's a lot of fears of AI and technological advancement. And of course, with Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years or so, there's going to be tremendous shadow work. We are literally like Inanna, as I wrote in that 2-part series, which you can read on my re-enchantment blog that went absolutely viral. We are like that goddess, the Sumerian goddess Inanna, who goes into the underworld. When we go into this deep soul journey in these next 20 years, this big dark night of the soul, it's the light of our soul that becomes that much more clarifying. Because when we're in the darkness and all the meaning of the world is now drifting away into this existential nausea as it's collapsing, the matrix collapses, we will be going through this period, as we already have, of like almost the post-truth era, where it's like nothing makes sense anymore. It seems so surreal, our reality even. Like if you look at like all the celebrities are being outed now as like rapists and pedophiles. I mean, this is not even facetiously, this is literally happening. It can seem like all of a sudden we're in like the first hour of an ayahuasca journey here, the phantasmagoria of reality. It's getting very, very surreal. And so we're going to need to have that anchoring of really doubling, tripling, quadrupling down even of those very basic foundational spiritual practices, which should be with us for the rest of our lives. And I'm speaking again of presence, meditation, to make sure that that deeper, higher consciousness that is more of our essence, that soul consciousness, is perpetually being cultivated. Because the more time you attend to that presence, the more that grows. And that's when you really start to see real positive change in your life. When you really start to engage this growth on the level of consciousness, which is really working on the root level of what we all are as beings. So that's going to become very relevant for this year. And I say this as also with a word of caution, because I know the shadow side of the information era is that we have all this information at our fingertips that we often forget that some of the things we may be reading or studying back in the day would require, initiation journeys to go through. And I know, people are saying, well, we're in this new age where the journey is accelerated and it doesn't matter as much anymore. I can do an initiation as they did in the mystery schools that would have taken a year in like 2 days. And I would say, hold your horses. there are no shortcuts. It's always a slow journey of building moral character. It doesn't matter how many mystical experiences you've had. I've met tons of people who have had crazy visions and mystical experiences, and they're still completely unregulated and emotionally outbursting and very fractured and spiteful and resentful people. It's really sitting with yourself day to day and doing that integration work through these practices, prayer as well, I would add. These are the basics, and they should be there for the rest of your life. And I highly recommend, as we pass into this new year portal, to really emphasize that. And this is also about, radiant resilience is also about acknowledging that the light of the soul is indomitable. It cannot be snuffed. It is eternal. It is forever. We reincarnate. We go through different journeys. And as we've just passed through the winter solstice, this is really what this pivot point is all about, the return of the light, because this is when we are furthest away from the sun in the northern hemisphere. So the sun appears to be very far away, but this is also the pivot point, the turning point, when we start to see the rebirth of the light, when we start to make our way back. And that is a very heavenly thing to feel. That's why the winter solstice, it's the holy darkness, but it's not a time for doom and gloom. It's a time of celebrating that even in our darkest hour, the light will shine. And that should be our mantra for this year. Even in the most dark hour, our light shines. It is resilient. It cannot be put out. So we need to really hold to that in 2025. And trust the process. This is another thing that's been coming to me this year, especially as I deepen my work with the I Ching, the Book of Changes, which is based on 5,000-year-old Oriental mystical wisdom, the Taoist wisdom. The Book of Changes, the I Ching, is constantly constantly, I shouldn't say impose, because it's very soft in the way that it oracles and recommends and suggests for you to guide your life. It speaks to you about how you can trust life. And the fact of the matter is, one of the greatest travesties of our mystical inclinations being oppressed and obliterated is that we no longer trust life. We feel that if we fall through the cracks, we're just going to fall into some kind of cesspool of hell and darkness. But in reality, life is this very organic and brilliant, divine, intelligent realm that is honestly always trying to support us. The thing is, we just have to switch off trying to do it ourselves all the time through the ego. We have to trust that we can listen and observe. This is the other thing: when you're present, you will start to listen and see things a lot more, because you'll start to channel. You be your own channel, your own oracle. You'll witness the synchronicities, the circumstances. Spending time in reflection, a great practice is at the end of your day, before you go to sleep, spend about 5-10 minutes reflecting on your day. What did you learn? Where did you slip? Where did you rise? And this creates a continuity of consciousness, which is very important, because a lot of the things in our world, with the distractions on the phone and AI just accelerating this, we feel fractured, we feel disconnected. And this is also going to be very important as technology. Technology is now getting very powerful with things like AI. And we need to realize that there is also DI, or NI, natural intelligence, divine intelligence. And I studied AI at university over 20 years ago. And I wrote a poignant piece this year about how I would never want AI to take away from my ability to channel, to receive creative visions, to write music, to create art. Our divinity is very connected to our imagination and our creativity. And if we overuse AI, for example, I saw a very startling share by a young person who uses ChatGPT so much to help them even just think in general about their day, that they've discovered when they're interacting with other people in real time, it's like their mind isn't working anymore. They're so used to ChatGPT being an extension of their thinking. And that's very, in my opinion, very wrong. And we need to push back against that. A lot of this problem with AI is not a problem with the AI itself. It's a problem with the fact that humanity has this deep worth wound, this misanthropic wound, a hatred of ourselves that religion has conditioned in us violently. If we didn't believe this, we were killed. So we were forced to believe these absolute deceptions about ourselves. And that's why a lot of people look to AI and they're like, oh, the holy AI, it's so much more amazing than us. It thinks more clearly than us. And I would say, no, it doesn't. AI is just a reflection of our own consciousness, turbo boosted with like hyper speed computational skills. And it's an extension of our very divine consciousness. If anything, it should embolden our sense of how brilliant we are, because we need to have a good, wholesome dose of authentic confidence. I'm not speaking about any superficial narcissism here. We need to really understand what is beautiful about humanity and the human soul. And this is why I'm so devotionally in allegiance, to borrow the message from 2024, to the ancient story of the goddess Gaia Sophia, as found in the Gnostic mystery schools, and why I teach this in my Gaia Awakening ritual concerts and workshops. And eventually in 2025, I'll be birthing the Gaia Awakening Wisdom Institute, where I'll be sharing a lot more of this. Because when we realize that we were designed by the divine, and that we are incredibly holy, and that we actually play a very specific role in what the Gnostics called the correction of the fallen goddess, who transformed into the planet Earth out of bold love to give us a sustainable planet to live on. But she's put herself in this kind of drama, being now away from her home in the Pleroma, the center of the galaxy, and she's trying to come into this alignment to infuse herself with some source consciousness. And we're fundamental in that. And it is our destiny to overcome the Archon tyranny. The Archons are said to be this kind of demonic adversary. It gets very sci-fi. And if you want to learn more about that, I have talks on my YouTube channel. I also have my Honor All Creation New Earth Story online course, where I take you through a lot of understanding about these ancient texts written thousands of years ago that were missing for thousands of years, recently discovered in the 20th century, that give a great new version of our human story. Because the human story that we've inherited now in the mainstream from science is that we're kind of like this meaningless, thinking animal that's just absolutely desecrated the natural environment, and we're like a cancer on this earth. And that's why you have certain AI theorists who are more on the transhumanist realm who want to replace humanity. And they speak about this very brazenly, about humanity needs to become homo machinus. It is our destiny to give birth to these machine humans that are going to be much more impeccably rational than us. And I want to say this is a huge misstep, and we need to resist that. We need to be resilient in knowing exactly our divinity. And this harkens back to the ancient mystery schools, when the Gnostic seers would astral travel and they'd be confronted by these demonic powers. And one of the chief ways these demonic powers would try and deceive us, which is their chief weapon, is they would try and tell us that they created us. And the Gnostics were trained to assert, no, I come from the goddess, who comes from Pleroma, I come from the divine. And in this way, they would assert their identity and come into more sovereignty of ourselves as divine humanity. They knew they were divinely human. They would go through these initiations and the mysteries. And I'd like to think that nowadays the whole earth has become a mystery school, and all these psychedelic plant medicine experiences, but just spiritual experiences with natural mystical states of presence and meditation, and even working with sound and music, as I know in a deep way, are initiating us into this remembering of our divine humanity. This is very important, that we experience these mystical states of consciousness that we can also experience in sacred sexuality, which is one of the greatest boons, and perhaps the whole reason sex exists is actually to transport us into these unified realms with our beloved. So this is really also about what this year is about, which is creating a resilient connection to our divinity, so that when we are challenged, and who knows what kind of devious deceptions are going to be thrown in our midst. I mean, if you're a student of the Bible, it says in the book of Revelation, there's going to be a whole figure of an antichrist and a whole banking system based on this being. And the whole world is going to be deceived into thinking this person is like our savior. And this is why I have concerns about things like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because a lot of the people who follow these people are just playing out that salvationalism that religion, to me, is distorting us with, this idea that someone outside of ourselves is going to save us. And there's a half-truth there. We have this connection to the goddess, the divine, but it speaks through us. We are our own saviors. And when we build resilient, beautiful communities, that gets even stronger. And so these are the type of things that we have to start to build to be in resilience, because we're going to have to resist a lot of incoming deception. Some of these things may have huge shockwaves in our world. Imagine what would happen if there was a fake alien invasion. I mean, it would terrify the masses, you know. So we're going to have to be very anchored and very resilient in our radiance, in the light of our souls this next year, to continue to stay the course. This is like an initiation. An initiation is willingly going through these spiritual psycho tests so that we can strengthen the powers and the muscles of our soul and our psyche. And this resilience is going to be tested this year, and it's going to be an incredible opportunity. You know, it's amazing, you know, witnessing the pandemic and such. It's amazing witnessing how strong and awakened humanity has become by facing into these adversities. It's really, really profound. And just a short little message as well. We have this new moon in Capricorn. And of course, Capricorn is, you know, an earth sign. So it gives us also this nice moment to be in the earthiness, to be grounded as we pass through the still point. The new moons are really still points, because it means the moon is far away from the earth, so we can't even see it in the night sky. It's giving us that opportunity to not be so hooked into the potent reflections of the sun through the moon, which is the light in our unconscious, giving us the space to plant some new seeds, these new cycles. So, and Capricorn is also, you know, very mystical. You know, it's the sea goat. You know, it's half goat, but it's a goat with a, you know, that has the ability to, has a tail so that it can like swim in the sea. And this is a sign of the ability of Capricorn in us all, you know, to go swim to the depths, but also to climb to the highest mountain. And the goats are the workers, you know, they're workhorses. They can climb to the top of the mountain. You know, they're the ones that bring a lot of sacred order into our planet. And I really feel this is also kind of spurring us into thinking about, you know, what do we want to really build in this new year on a bigger collective level? Because that's also the big thing that's being handed to us. And this new moon is a nice little perspective into that, is that humanity for a long time has given away its ability to be a creator to others. We've asked for others to do it for us, whether it's the politicians, whether it's the celebrities, the visionaries. But we all have a role to play. And this year is also about us coming into like each of us being the builders of this new earth, this prophecy that isn't just New Age, that has been heralded by a lot of indigenous elders and visionaries. This idea of a whole new civilization on earth that is really devoted to great peace and love and wisdom. So this new moon in Capricorn is also grounding us as we pass through this portal, and it's also giving us a beautiful sense of feeling that hard workingness to build. Now, I will say on a last final note here, just about the energetics of the new year, I will say that as we go into the new year, I am more someone who follows the wheel of the year, the Celtic portals of time. And I will say that the Gregorian calendar has kind of imposed this unnatural way of passing through the year. And this is why when many people make these massive New Year's resolution around this time of year, a lot of them don't have the, coming back to this word, resiliency to really see themselves endure throughout the passage of time. Because especially if you're living in the northern latitudes, this is the cold, slow time of year where you're supposed to go inside and rest and regenerate, take some time off. You know, in our day and age, in this modern era, we work way too much. We've lost, again, that balance of striking a balance between rest and activity. And so as much as we are passing through a portal in the turning of the Gregorian year numerically, and there's a whole collective field of vibration that's initiating us into that, I will say that it's much more auspicious to start to look to the month of March, where we come into the time of spring, where we have that beautiful infusion of that spring energy, bringing a spring into our step. That's more or less the time that I would start to look at setting new patterns in your life. So just a recommendation, you know, because I want all of us to really be powerful creators in our life. And it's important to be changeable, to be willful, to set new intentions, and to really strive, to liberate ourselves and to be the best versions of ourselves. But this is the time of year where it's not so much about that. It's more about resting and renewal. And when it comes to that month near the end of March, where that spring portal comes in, you will feel that zest in the air, which is much more natural the time of the year, much more natural time of year to really activate those new patterns in your life. So just something to consider. So I'm going to end us off here with just a little blessing, a little prayer. I'm going to share some of my sound here, and I'm playing the beautiful music. Just see if this is working here. So this is the music of Gregorian chant. And I highly recommend, if you want to invite some sacred sound healing into your life, Gregorian chant music has been now scientifically studied to be the most healing music on the planet. It even has the ability to help heal our DNA. So anytime you listen to Gregorian chant, it has that kind of healing effect. And it's also said to keep away, like a sonic smudge, kind of flits away any negative, archontic, demonic energies too. So very profound effect. So I have some Gregorian chant playing for us in the background. So if you'll just join me here in this closing prayer, I'm going to invite you just to unite your hands. You can nestle them against your heart. And just closing down the eyes. And anytime we bring our hands together in prayer, this is also a gesture, a unifying gesture. It brings the left and the right, the lunar and the solar, the masculine and the feminine energies together inside of us. And coming into our holy heart, in the center of our chest, energetic location of the heart. And seeing in your heart this resilient radiance, this light of your soul, shining with incandescence. And the radiant resilience of the heart really lives the truth of one of William Shakespeare's greatest quotations, which is, "Sweet are the uses of adversity." For this radiant resilience knows that any time we are faced with adverse, challenging situations, shadow work, or we delve into the dark, see some of the howling pain that's been hidden in our shadows, what we severed from ourselves, and what we're invited to offer to rejoin us. This soul fragmentation to soul integration work. The more we do this work, the more we realize, I am actually indomitably strong and powerful. I have the ability to bear incredible suffering. I'm sure if we were to take a moment now to reflect on our life and all that we've been through, you would know this idea of radiant resilience is pretty proven just by the fact that we are still going in life. And life is very challenging, but those challenges are not meaningless. They're always part of this deeper soul education and excavation of our greater powers, waiting in our latent DNA potentials to come forth. And so over time, this radiant resilience, this luminosity of the heart, the light of our soul, starts to revel even in challenges, knowing that the great warrior in us always brings a smile to our face when we are faced with challenges, knowing that this is going to be an opportunity to grow ourselves. So we start to slowly build this enthusiasm before challenges, this rubbing of the hands together of, yes, here is an opportunity for me to wake more of myself into activity, to learn something new, to evolve, to become more virtuous, more marvelous in the infinitudes of my potentials. This is a very beautiful attitude, a beautiful mindset that the resiliency of our radiance will initiate us into a joy, a great joy, and also trusting life, knowing that life does not want to destroy or crush us. It wants to maybe put us through things, but only for more of our beauty, our fullness, our be you to the fullness, become more clear, more alive. I pray in the year to come that the initiations to come will continue to awaken us to the great radiance of the human soul as we remember our great divinity, long forgotten, now being restored, revivified in this holy shifting time, this time of great alchemical awakening and awareness, loving awareness, as this revolutionary shift of consciousness takes on a whole new octave of actualization. May you all be blessed in seeing this truth come to life, come to light in the year to come. May you have gnosis and know the divine as a part of yourself, directly, sovereignly you. May we all collectively continue to weave a new world together, a transpersonal purpose, universal truth, this goldening age to come that we are now but the powerful catalyst for. We are blessed. We are divine humanity, and it is the divine time. Be you to the full. Remember the God, remember the goddess, remember source, and honor all creation. Sending you blessings, infinitely so. May love reign, may wisdom reign. Love is almighty. Thank you for being here with me today and wishing you all